Ilia Topuria is the nightmare matchup for Islam Makhachev. Not that many people want to say it, nobody wants to admit it, but the reality is, this guy is just a nightmare stylistically for Islam. So Islam Makhachev has been talking about moving up, and so has Ilia Topuria. And recently, one of the biggest what-if fights that we can get, and possibly this year, if what the rumors are true, are saying that supposedly Ilia Topuria would fight Islam Makhachev at 155, moving up to fight for the belt. And a lot of people are dismissing Topuria, saying, "Oh, Topuria is too small. He's not going to be able to handle a proper grappler like Islam. He's not going to be able to handle someone that can like strike and kick and do everything like that." And to those people, I say, I think you're wrong. I think this guy is a nightmare style matchup for Islam. And even though I think it's a competitive fight, I think if there's anyone who can actually beat Islam Makhachev, it's actually Ilia Topuria. If we're not counting contenders at welterweight, nobody at 155 beats Islam except maybe Arman. Nobody from 145 can beat Islam. The only guy that can beat him is the featherweight champ, and that's Ilia Topuria. And when I want to talk about the style matchup, here's the thing what Topuria has. Topuria started out as a BJJ in wrestling background. He didn't start out with striking. He eventually learned it, and he has a really strong base in Greco-Roman, I think. And he actually said that he used to wrestle against Dagestani guys, and he recognizes their mindset, and used to grapple with them. Another thing too that you have to recognize is Ilia probably has the best boxing in the UFC right now. He doesn't strike like your typical MMA striker. He strikes like the type of guy that actually knows how to box. The way he lands his punch, the way he just hits with that power, his combinations are all so clean and slick. And I think people underestimate how good his boxing is. And one thing that they have to talk about too is just his power. This guy hits harder than 145 McGregor. He really does hit harder than 145 McGregor in my opinion, because McGregor, we see him fought Max Holloway, and granted it was with a broken knee, if I remember correctly, or injured knee, and McGregor couldn't put out Max, and that was a young Max. Now, you put a Topuria there with a prime Holloway, because he just came off a win off of Gaethje. He just knocked out Gaethje at the end of the fight with legendary stuff, that's going in the history books. That was the best version of Max Holloway we saw yet, and yet Topuria put his lights out. Gave him a left hook that literally stunned his entire head and turned him around. It was an incredible punch. Like, when you see it in slow motion, the way Holloway's head turns, you're like, this guy hits hard, man. He's the hardest hitter at 145, and I think he might even be the hardest hitter from 155. The only person I know from 155 that hits really hard if they load up is Chandler. Like, Chandler, if he loads up properly, can hit hard, but even then, I think Topuria, like, not even trying to, like, unload his punches can maybe hit harder than Chandler. I think when you put someone that has amazing grappling, I want to say offensive grappling is a little bit more on the lower end with Ilia Topuria, but defensive, or it might be the other way around. Offensive grappling is better, and defensive grappling might not be as good. But when you have someone that can maybe deny Islam's takedowns and you can force him to strike, and that's an issue, this guy can really put everything together when it matters. And of course, I'm not saying that Topuria is just going to dominate the fight. If Islam and Topuria fight, I'm not going to say that Topuria just walks all over Makhachev. No, I think it's going to be a competitive fight, and I think it's not a walk in the park for Topuria. I think there's some things that Islam can do that can be very difficult for Topuria. For example, we know Islam has a great kicking game, and we know from the Jai Herbert fight with Topuria that Topuria has been... He got caught once with the kick and nearly got knocked out from Jai Herbert, so... We recently saw Makhachev, like a couple fights ago, knocked out Volkanovski with a head kick. You see where I'm going with this? Topuria and Volkanovski, similar height, both from 145. You see where I'm going? I think if this fight were to happen, it could end in a knockout. I don't think this fight will go to a decision. I don't even think it's going to go to a submission. I think someone's going to get knocked out. And I'm pretty confident in saying that someone's going to get knocked out in that fight. And if we do see this fight happen, because there is rumors that it's going to happen, I'm picking Topuria. I know that sounds stupid. Topuria right now is, he's only got one defense, but he's looked damn good doing it. And Islam is just like the reigning champ, like the face of the UFC besides Alex Pereira. Besides Alex Pereira, right now he's the face of the UFC, number one pound for pound. But I just think, Topuria can really be the guy that put it together. Like, he's just got this aura of confidence that nobody else has. Kind of like Volkanovski in the first Islam Makhachev fight. And the difference is, I think Volk would have won that fight if he had power in his hands, but he doesn't. Volk has like average featherweight power. He doesn't really have knockout power. But when you have someone that can actually have power, then I think that fight, I think we would have saw Volkanovski become double champ, you know? And right now we'd be talking about Volkanovski like he's the GOAT probably right now. And I just think Topuria has that answer. You know, maybe he needs to work on his offensive grappling or defensive grappling if the fight does get announced. I don't know if they're ever gonna do this fight. There's a good chance it might slip away from us and it never happens. Kind of like Khabib versus Ferguson, or a GSP versus Anderson Silva, or Anderson Silva versus Jones. But there's a chance that we can see this fight. And you know, it's an insane pick, but if that fight happens, I'm picking Topuria. You know, I think he really is that confident where he can put it together. But I'm not saying it's a walk in the park because, like I said, Islam has dangerous kicks. He's got very good clinch striking. He's got very good grappling. The one thing I'm worried about more is grappling. Like, Islam's grappling is very good, MMA grappling. But as we saw in some fights, he doesn't really dominate. Like, of course, we saw him dominate Moicano, like, simply, like, just off a scramble, he got his neck and did a Darce choke. But then we saw someone like Dustin Poirier, you know? Like, everyone was expecting him to dominate Dustin Poirier. I was expecting him to dominate Dustin Poirier, you know? I was saying, like, Islam second round submission. Turns out it was the final round, you know? And those were, like, even though I gave, I think, all the rounds to Islam, I might have gave one round to Poirier. Like, it wasn't really, like, a performance that was flawless. That's the thing. Those rounds were a little bit competitive, you know? Dustin landed some good shots off of him, and that was an old Dustin at, like, 34, 35 years old. Islam is very well-rounded, but he's not indestructible. He doesn't have that aura invincibility like Khabib has, you know? And I just think that Islam is hittable. He's not as dominant. And even though he's more well-rounded, he can submit you and knock you out. He can bring you to a decision too. Well, that's not really something to brag about. I just think that he's not like Superman, you know? He's not like Khabib. Khabib had like that Superman-like aura. And I think Topuria can actually put it on Makhachev. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh, Makhachev like just dominates like Topuria. I'm like, no. Last time Makhachev fought a 45er, you know, the first fight around, look how that fight went. And even though, yeah, Australia, weight cut like one day in advance, Volk was feeling the best he ever felt, Islam was feeling the worst he ever felt, supposedly. I just think Topuria can put it all together. And it's a fun fight. Come on, like, we want to see this. Like, even though some people are saying Topuria doesn't deserve it, he's only got one title defense. Well, look right now, the 155 division. We have no contender for Islam Makhachev because Dana White just said Arman Rematch will not be fighting Islam Makhachev next because he pulled out of the fight with 1 day left on the pay-per-view. 1 day late notice replacement. Normally, Islam wouldn't have fought, but because Moicano was already in the card, luckily we got a match. You see where I'm going with this? So I'm just saying it's insane. It's insane, really, because we have no obvious contenders, and Islam himself said he wants to fight by July. Now, Islam also said he wants to fight Gaethje, but is Gaethje actually going to be ready in 2-3 months when that fight happens with Dan Hooker? I just think, like, why not do it now? Why not do Topuria versus Islam? It's the only fight that we have for Islam Makhachev besides waiting out for Gaethje or Hooker if they even have enough time to rest, because I think he wants to fight by June or July. You know, that's 2-3 months worth of rest. Most people are not going to take it because I know it's probably going to be a bloodbath with a Gaethje and Hooker. And, you know, it's not like Islam is going to move up to welterweight. I think he still has a little bit of business left at 155. So I think when I make this fight, yeah, a lot of people are saying that they're probably going to fight Volkanovski at UFC 314 in Miami, which that's probably going to happen. I doubt we're going to see this fight, but if somehow, some way, maybe if we get a quick turnaround from Topuria, maybe Topuria gets a first round KO with Volkanovski from April, and he wants to make a turnaround in July and fight Islam, then that would be incredible. Anyways, that's it for this video, guys. I just want to talk about this hypothetical matchup and how I see it going and how I think that it's a lot more competitive than you guys think, and it's not going to be dominant from either way. You know, I can see Islam winning the match. I can see Topuria, but I think Topuria is actually a nightmare matchup for Islam. But I also think Islam is a bit of a nightmare matchup for Topuria. In a way, both of these guys are their worst matchups, and it's a fight we need to see. It would be a shame if we didn't get to see this fight, because I just really do think this fight is probably the best fight you can make in the UFC right now. It's not Jones versus Aspinall. It's not Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, which is set to be happening in a month from now, a month and a half, I think. And the best fight is Topuria versus Makhachev, like undefeated versus guy on like the longest winning streak, current active winning streak in the UFC right now. It has all the ifs and ands. All the stakes are on the line. GOAT status is on the line type of shit too. It needs to happen. Anyways, that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you guys like the video. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.